What is up, everybody? This is Nick from P2W Fantasy, and tonight I have two awesome guests on the podcast joining me to talk about some fantasy football statements and topics, and if we feel that they are fact or fiction. So, all three of us I know are active on Twitter, always engaging and tweeting and connecting with people outside of producing content, and we tend to see a lot of bold statements all the time and hear different things. So I thought it'd be fun to address some statements and topics that can range from very simple, draft day things to digging deep on some teams. So that's what we got going on today. Let me introduce the two guests individually right now. I'll start with Erik. Erik is the senior writer and assistant editor for Dynasty Nerds, dynastynerds.com. You can find him there. Big brand right there. I see the brand has so many different writers and guys that contribute and all quality guys that are part of that. I just saw recently you did does efficiency metrics matter article. I think you have it pinned. Looked at some wide receivers. Looked at some sneaky buys, some future opportunities. You had some crazy strings of acronyms here, like correlation, coefficients, and linear regressions. Not acronyms, but terms, I guess. So you were digging deep into some article terminology right there. But Erik, can you just tell us, because this is going to be on the podcast, can you tell us first of all where we can find you, just for those who are not watching the live stream, and then what sort of content you have going on right now?
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me on. And sorry to confuse you with a bunch of math nerd jargon.
Yeah.
But you can find me on Twitter at EKBaller. You can see it in the window. I'm always available to chat fantasy, to answer questions. I'll retweet anything that's non-offensive and has to do with fantasy football. So yeah, you can get me there. Dynasty Nerds, find my articles there. If you search Erik Quartz, Dynasty Nerds, you'll come up with my whole oeuvre. And I've been working on the efficiency metrics articles like Nick was talking about. And, just trying to see what's useful, right? What's useful, that's where it came from. And the next one of those should be dropping in about a week or so. And I'm looking at some other advanced metrics and doing some math things. So don't let the math turn you off. It's science.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very specific and different approach to things, because we see a lot of the same sort of content subjects all the time. So you're digging deep into some math there. But yeah, awesome content there. I also have Paul with us today. Paul is part of the Undroppables, also part of the Unscripted podcast with the Terminator, Randall, and my guy Beezy, who was also on the podcast here at P2W before. Ironically, Paul might have been one of the first big accounts that I reached out when I started off in March for P2W, and I wrote it down. It was 4/18/2020. I reached out to you about an article I was writing, who's going to be better in 2020, player A or player B. And I remember just being ridiculously excited at the time that you gave me the time of day and contributed to that article. And I think you might have contributed before, after that to some other ones. But yeah, most of the community knows you as Paulie Sleepers. Very interactive, and I really respect the way that it seems that it doesn't matter if you have 5, 10, 100 followers or 10,000, that you are very respectful of people, and one of the original guys that I got connected with. So, Paul, can you talk about maybe talk about the Unscripted and maybe give us, for guys that don't know the guys at the Undroppables, a little background about how you guys got together, because that's an awesome group too.
Appreciate that, Nick, and always happy to help, man. You nailed it. 5 followers, 5,000, it doesn't matter. That's what it's about. It's about the community. And so started with the Undroppables in the fall as a project that was really going to kind of beta launch this year and alpha launch in 2021. Coronavirus hit. Everybody had a lot more time at home, and we decided to kind of fast track the project. We now have over 20 members. We just added 2-on-1 Tommy and Al Sabermetrics to the squad recently this week. We've got analytics guys. We've got probably the best graphics guy in the business. We've got analysts for redraft and dynasty, and we've been pumping out about 3 articles a week doing our off-season breakdowns. So different members of the team have taken on like 1 to 3 teams a piece to break down everything free agency, draft, their fantasy outlook, dynasty outlook. We just want to be a one-stop shopping for fantasy. Like the dynasty nerds. I tweeted out not too long ago, I really think that the undroppables and the dynasty nerds and the astronauts are really, I think, the 3 that I feel that are at our level, bringing the heat right now really strong. So you can check out the Unscripted podcast. We just dropped episode 12. Last week we had Ryan McDowell and Scott Fish on at the same time. That was really cool. And those guys are buds. So we kind of let them run with it. It was fun. And then our new website just launched. Chalk and team has been working very, very tirelessly to have an awesome website. It's theundroppables.com. It's all night mode. It's really, really cool. Tons and tons and tons of content. And you can also go on there and see my sleepers that I've been updating weekly. So my 2020 sleepers, I'll also be doing waiver wire pickups this year and a couple DraftKings sleepers at each position each week. So we got a lot. We got a lot going on. We got merchandise coming too, and tons of fun stuff. So
10 years right there. Yeah, I like to see the updated versions of that sleepers list, even if it means that my Chicago Bears don't have a guy that even makes it. But it is good content. It is good content. I will say that. We got a couple comments. Just throw them on right now. Love the Dynasty Nerds. Great content from Under Siege 79. Our guy, Chris, Detroit Beastie. Hey, good evening, guys. And then what's up, guys, from The Godfather. So we got some good guys tuning in right now.
Those first 2 accounts I recognize very, very well. I see them on there all the time.
Yeah. I've actually had Chris on there multiple times. So real quick. So before we get into some fact and fiction, everybody and their mother, their sister, their brother is talking about Leonard Fournette being a Buccaneer. We can talk in depth about what that means in fantasy, but I think that that's happening enough right now. What I thought was interesting, or would be interesting to do, though, is now that he is on the Buccaneers, and let's say we assume that he is going to take a bulk of that load, I'm going to list off some guys that might be in the vicinity of where he might start going in drafts, just because a lot of people have their drafts this weekend, a lot of home leagues. I have a home league myself. Paul, you said you had one too, or 2 this weekend. But Leonard Fournette, 2019 PPR leagues, RB7. 2018, he only played 8 games, RB40. 2017, RB9. So we've seen him be productive in the fantasy world, but on a Jacksonville team that gave him the opportunity to do so. If we're drafting, or if you guys are drafting, I'm gonna read you off a name. I don't need a big explanation about it, but it's just going to be a this guy or Fournette, who are you taking sort of thing. I thought it'd be a fun opening exercise we got going on right now. And got Beezy trying
Beezy.
There, yep. And D Brown with some eyes.
D.
Thanks, Paul. You've been a big help to my growth as well.
Under Siege.
Awesome.
Nice guy. Very nice guy.
Yeah, we got a lot of guys with comments. So we'll start right here with 2020. Just give me your pick, David Johnson or Leonard Fournette. And we'll start with you, Erik.
Fournette.
Fournette. All right, Paul.
This is nuts. I literally adjusting rankings back and forth, and he just went 1 spot above David Johnson for me. So I've got them both neck and neck. Fournette slightly higher.
Okay, so neck and neck right there. All right, we'll move on. How about Todd Gurley or Leonard Fournette? We'll start with Paul this time.
And he's one spot behind Johnson, so I'm still Fournette there, but we're all in the same.
It's tight.
We're all in the same boat.
All right, Erik.
Yeah, I like Gurley more than DJ, but I think I still like Fournette a little bit better than him.
Okay, because I see a big mix of takes on Fournette. So it's interesting to see how this change weighs him out with some of these guys. So I got a few more. Mark Ingram or Leonard Fournette, 2020. Erik.
I'll take Lenny. Yeah.
Paul.
Leonard Fournette. J.K. Dobbins is going to have something to say about.
All right.
Situation over there.
Two more. Leonard Fournette or Raheem Mostert, Paul.
They're right in that same area, but Mostert I have a few spots behind, so I'm still going Fournette.
All right. Erik?
Yeah, it's still Lenny. Gurley was the closest one for me. That one I had to think about.
Yeah.
It could go either way, but Mostert, it's just he's not going to get the rush share that I want to see consistently. Shanahan doesn't care about how good you are, you know.
All right, last one. Leonard Fournette or Chris Carson, 2020, and we'll go with Erik.
That's easy. That's Carson all day for me.
Okay. All right. Same.
Agreed.
All right, so that's I think that might have been the first very, very clear-cut one that we're saying against Fournette, but. Yeah, it's interesting to see how he weighs out. I know some guys were writing him off big time, but he's got a lot of opportunity for the Buccaneers going in. Let's start with our first fact or fiction for the night. I'm looking at the one I got on my list here. All right, so here's the statement. You guys tell me if it's fact or fiction in your justification of why it's one way or the other. So the statement is, you should have a draft strategy going into your drafts for 2020. So I guess to clarify this a little bit more, and we have a wide range of an audience. There's people that are, into fantasy football when it's that season. And then there's the diehards that are into fantasy football year round. So I like to, look at topics that apply to a lot of different people. And with these ideas of, no running back draft strategy, zero running back draft strategy. And then there's some that say if you're in a super flex, you should be drafting RB, QB. There's a lot of different strategies I've seen. Do you think it's important to adopt a strategy going into your drafts? Let's say you have a home league this weekend. We'll start with you, Erik. Do you think that's fact or fiction? You should have a draft strategy.
Yeah, I think the way I like to play and the way I would suggest, if people don't already have kind of their own way of going about things, I like to have a strategy. You do want to be flexible. You want to take value as it comes, but particularly in like a standard PPR sort of league, I'm probably starting running back, unless I'm at a certain spot in the draft or a wide receiver, that falls to me, right? So for me, the most important thing is knowing your player values and knowing what you want from a roster construction, right? What's the opportunity cost of taking that wide receiver at the back of the first? Who's going to be your RB2 if you do that, So a lot of my drafts this year I have come from the back, and I'm getting like the one I did today. I got Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Mixon at the back end of the turn. I did one earlier and got Cook, and then came back and got Mixon. I'm not passing up those guys for any wide receiver that's not named Michael Thomas, And then, this is one of those things like we could probably spend all night talking about too.
Yeah, sure.
My other big draft, I guess it's like a draft rule for me, right? Or just trend that I know that I've noticed anecdotally from doing a lot of drafts is I kick a quarterback way down, even in Superflex. And I know that's a contentious thing, right, that we could get in Twitter brawls all day about.
Well, yeah.
But
yeah.
I've drafted a lot. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say you're going to ignite some people with that statement, but yeah.
Look, I've drafted Superflex teams where I took quarterbacks early, and I've drafted some where I punted the crap out of it. Mm-hmm. And those second teams I like a lot better. And the first Superflex, dynasty league I won, I was starting Andy Dalton in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? But I was also starting Saquon and Alvin Kamara. You know,
Yep.
would you rather have, like Watson and Raheem Mostert, or Alvin Kamara and Josh Allen, or Ryan Tannehill? Give me the studs. Give me the stud running back.
So you're more on the fact side then.
On the fact, yeah. Sorry to diverge from the game, but
making sure I don't have a curveball, like a big butt statement at the end. But yeah, all right. So you're on the fact side. Paul, what do you think as far as going into a draft strategy? Is that should you have a strategy going in? Is that a fact or a fiction for people drafting?
Well, one thing I'll say is I'm right on board with Erik on waiting on quarterbacks. Even in Superflex, if you ask, I don't know if Beezy's still on, he'll tell you. The Undroppables, guys that are in leagues with me will tell you that I wait. And this year I decided I'm going to try something different. And in one of my dynasty leagues, I did go early. And I hate that team. I think I'm really going to have to probably ship one of those quarterbacks off to be a contender. And you mentioned opportunity cost. I talk about value over replacement all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's about. The replacement cost of that top wide receiver or running back, you're going to be in a much better situation than what you're losing going down to that next quarterback that you're going to get 6 rounds later. Mm-hmm. But my answer is fiction. I don't ever have a draft strategy. If you've done this long enough and your tiers, about value over replacement, you know how to zig and zag. We're talking about home leagues this weekend. That's where everybody's drafting is their home leagues, especially in those leagues, super wild card leagues. I will go 0 RB if the opportunity presents itself. It's not something I'm going to walk into a draft and say, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do 0 RB. I would never do that. But if the chips fall a certain way, I'll go that way because that wide receiver that I'm getting is that much better than the next one that would be off the board, or that tight end. Then those second tier running backs, there's been a lot of data over the last few years that the second tier guys miss. Obviously, if you have a chance to get the top guys, you got to go for it. And it's funny that you mentioned Cook and Mixon, because that was a really popular turn at the end of drafts last year, remember? And it's right there in front of your face again. A lot of people are getting that same opportunity to go Cook and Mixon. That's such a 2019 move. But I think it's going to work. But if those guys are off the board, and depending on scoring settings, I'll go Michael Thomas and George Kittle too. But zig when the others are zagging. Look for your opportunities. Definitely go running back if you can. Wait on quarterbacks. Always, absolutely.
I do have I missed this comment. It's a pretty good one here. Pretty in pink, Paulie. Beezy said, I think he might have dipped out after that. There you go. And then Under Siege. So in most cases, you need to grab the best value available.
Yes, and stick to your tiers.
Yeah. So I think as far as a strategy, I think strategy and being prepared are things that can go hand in hand, but can also be very separated. What I tend to like to go is I like to hoard running backs when I'm drafting. But going into a draft, the minute the clock starts, no matter what pick you are, things start changing rapidly. My wife had her home league that she her only league, I think, that she drafted in last night, and she talked to me about some guys she liked. She asked me about some guys I liked beforehand. Didn't text her during it, but she told me when she got back home that people started drafting all over the place. So I think the minute you go in saying, I'm going to draft like this tonight, you're probably not going to have that exact mock draft sort of valuation that's going to follow you all the time. So I think being prepared and having a strategy going in is something you could do, but sticking to I'm only going to draft like this no matter how the draft goes, I'm going to say it's fiction, because I think that's a tough way to approach drafts. So
exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna go fiction on that. So let's move on to the next one here. Good information from both of you guys there. So if you draft a first-round running back, you need, and I gave you guys a script here. I put need in all caps. You need to draft their specific handcuff. So we're still talking about draft strategy here, or drafting, since people are drafting this weekend. If you draft somebody in the first round, running back wise, do you have to get that running back handcuff somewhere in that draft, or trade for him later? What do you guys think about that? We'll start with Paulie there.
No, you don't. For me, it's all about value, and it's all about having depth at the position. And if I can get somebody else's handcuff, that can end up being more value down the road, more trade-worthy value down the road. Shout out to Hilo, if you guys know Hilo on Twitter, really pounds the pavement with this. Mm-hmm. He doesn't believe in handcuffs at all. He just believes in getting depth at running back. Having said that, there's some that I'd like to have. There's some that I would definitely watch out for. I think that you've got guys like Tony Pollard and Alexander Madison and Latavius Murray that are definitely on a different tier of handcuffs. Mm-hmm. Right now, I would add Darrell Williams to that for the Clyde Edwards people, especially since you could get him so late, and especially since a lot of people don't even realize that he's the RB2 there. I had a big tweet about that and really deflated a lot of people when they put Fab out there for DeAndre Washington. And the hate came my way when I suggested that DeAndre Washington would not be the backup there. And, he played with Mahomes in college. Yeah, I get it. But system's going to always favor a guy that knows the system and has produced in the system. So that's one I would throw out there that would be really easy to get. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind that one at all. Lat is kind of tough because Lat's going to go ahead of all those other guys, especially now with the Alvin Kamara contract situation and the epidural in his back and everything. You got to realize if you're taking Kamara and you want his handcuff, that's probably your first and sixth rounder. That's a lot to invest right there.
Yep.
So my short answer is no, you don't have to. And just get depth.
All right, Erik, fact or fiction that you should take the handcuff of your first round running back if you do draft one? So Paul said fiction on that. What do you think?
I'm going to agree with Paulie on this one. It's usually a waste of a roster spot. I used to hear that back in the day, or even there are times where it's not a horrible idea, right? Like Dalvin Cook, it's not a horrible idea to take Alexander Madison, because if Cook gets hurt, Madison is going to get the workhorse role. He's going to be a startable asset. He's not going to turn into a committee all of a sudden. But for myself in a standard redraft league, benches aren't that long. So I draft a handcuff and I cut him in week 1 because I want the guy that just went off. You know what I mean? And everyone else I drafted for a reason. So that's usually the expendable guy. So say when I've done that, historically, it's been a waste of a draft pick. That's my first guy to go. Yeah. I will say there are players kind of like Paulie alluded to a little bit that I don't see as handcuffs. I see as the lesser members of a committee that are productive, right? And, you've seen that in the past with Murray. We're hoping Pollard might get a little bit more work this year. That's the rumor. But for me, I'm targeting guys like Tevin Coleman for that. He's not better than Mostert, but he's still going to get the ball a lot. Targeting the heck out of Zach Moss in redraft. He might be the starter, but he's not being drafted that way. A few other guys, Philip Lindsay, right? Philip Lindsay's going right now 4 rounds after Melvin Gordon. And
stealing some.
I do think, I think Gordon gets more high-value touches, but otherwise I think it's a pretty even timeshare. And Gordon's hurt. So
I like that call.
Yeah. I think it's fiction as well. I saw an interesting strategy about not taking, your first round backup, but taking somebody else's backup if you're on a deeper team, because maybe at the end of the day, you have some trade value there, or you might end up with 2 starting running backs if that works out. I got my guy Manny checking in. What's up, Manny? Great guy right there. Yeah, I'd rather, again, going back to that like running back hoarder sort of thing. I want guys that might have some standalone value themselves, right? I did an article where I went through 32 teams and I defined their backup as either a handcuff or a standalone value sort of guy. And you guys talked about a handful of them, but when you look at the guys going a little bit higher, like a Kareem Hunt or Tariq Cohen, James White, let's say he's behind whoever, you don't really look at them guys as a handcuff, right? They got their own standalone value. You can go a little bit deeper. Zach Moss is going still pretty late. He might end up the starter, like you said, but he might have some standalone value. We saw Boston Scott have some standalone value, get him for very, very cheap. You guys talked about Phillip Lindsay. So I'm more so of getting guys that right away, if you're in a pinch, you can throw them on your flex. Let's say it's a bad bye week for you. I would have no problem on a bad bye week throwing Phillip Lindsay into my flex position, or rolling the dice on Boston Scott having the last 3 weeks of football that he had in 2019 for a game in 2020. So I think it is fiction. I know a lot of people do like to do it. Guys in my league are always trying to figure out ways to trade for their own handcuffs. But yeah, I'm not going to be worried about having, Reggie Bonifin if I'm a CMC owner when he's not going to touch the ball, at all during the season. It's kind of a waste of a roster spot, especially if you are not in those deep leagues, like we said before. So good points all around. And let's move on to the next one. I hear this pretty often in quotations: too many mouths to feed is a factor to consider with your rostered players. So this could be come draft day, or it could be after you really shape your team, after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Do you factor in too many mouths to feed for guys that you want on your fantasy football team? Erik, we can start with you on this. Is that a fact or fiction?
I think it's more fiction than not, but I do think there's situations where there's some truth to that, right? I think it comes down to volume. Who's going to get volume, And you hear it said, talent's going to get targets, right? Talent's going to get the ball. And I think it's going to override, right? Like too many mouths to feed most of the time. But, anecdotally, I look at last year we were having the argument about how is Godwin, Mike Evans, and OJ Howard all going to be top 5 or top 10 options at their position. And one of them wasn't, right? And there wasn't enough volume to go around. Godwin and Evans, they got the targets, and there's other stuff there, obviously.
You're rubbing that point in right now, because I was like a massive OJ Howard truther for the last 2 years, and I've had all these arguments that I lost. So I mean, that was rough. But yeah, good point.
It was on all my teams last year, Nick. It hurt.
100% for me too.
So I think on the other hand, we look at the Cowboys this year, and am I worried about drafting any of those players where they're going? No. I mean, they're not. They're going at reasonable places for what they're going to do. Lamb's going super late, or like scarcely being drafted in redraft. Gallup is a huge value where he's going. He was more so earlier in the summer, but I got him in a lot of redraft teams at a cost that I liked. And I think Amari he's the least in terms of value of the three, but I still think he's going to perform. And I even think Jarwin's going to return value because he's free. He's undrafted, or he's going in the 12th, 13th round. So yeah, too many mouths to feed. I guess it depends on your expectation. So fiction.
All right. Paul, how about you? Fact or fiction?
Yeah, it's fiction, unless you're talking about Jags. The Jags are the ones that don't get fed when extra talent comes to town. We did a huge thread and had a big debate on this actually this summer. Mike Reedy from the Undroppables and Blake Hampton, that's not with us anymore. He's graduated and he's with the Fantasy Points guys now. But I did a lot of research on it. Blake did too. Mike did too. And our findings were that if you're hashtag good at football, that's not a thing. So the Jags are the ones that suffer. I think Michael Gallup will be the 2020 poster child for mouths to feed. 113 targets last year. He's got the trust of the quarterback. He's got the system. There's 170, I think, ish vacated targets there. CeeDee Lamb is a better wide receiver. Just going to, throw that out there right now. Amari Cooper is a better wide receiver. But Michael Gallup is awful damn good. And there were stretches when he even out-targeted Amari. I think he will get slightly more targets this year than he did last year. I like him for the 120 to 125 range. Even though McCarthy's not going to be the OC, I think his influence will be felt with the offensive coordinator. And he likes to throw in the red zone a lot. Yeah. That could hurt Zeke, I think, a little bit and help the wide receivers. But yeah, we delved into tons of situations with the Saints and the Eagles and the Rams over the last 5-6 years and found over and over again that that talent kind of trumps that mouths to feed argument.
Yeah, I think it's fiction too. And I also think where these guys go in draft also kind of cancel it out, because it's not like Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb are going in the same sort of tier or round at all. So it's not like you're worrying about, man, I got to grab one of these guys, in the third round. They're all third round guys. Who do I pick? Who's going to get the mouthful from it? So I think ADP is a factor there. I looked at last year when Cooks, Kupp, and Woods were all healthy at one point. I don't think people really had a problem having those guys on their team and taking that chance. And that does come into a volume conversation like you guys kind of mentioned too. I mean, if the Rams are the team you're looking at, back then last year, you got Kupp, Cooks, and Woods. Goff's going to throw the ball, in the top 3 to 4, most attempts in the league. So you don't really have an issue with that. I'd say if you're really juggling guys on a team that runs the ball all the time, there's too many mouths to feed. Maybe that's more of a factor if you're weighing things out. But I think that guys that are on similar teams or on the same team that are going to contest for volume and targets, you don't have to worry about drafting them too close together. I mean, look at OBJ, Jarvis, Landry, and Austin Hooper. They're going very spread out in your drafts, and you can talk about, hey, there's too many mouths to feed there. You got Kareem Hunt who's going to catch balls too. But at the same time, there could be the volume. There could be the opportunity for you to draft them later anyway. So I think it's fiction for me too. It's something I see all the time, and I think it's one of those things where you see it once, you see it twice, and now you kind of pick up on it, and now you're saying it. So that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to do this sort of podcast tonight, because we see a lot of the same sort of like phrases all the time. And, are they really accurate in the thing? I think it's important to kind of analyze those things. So good takes by you guys again. Let's go a little bit into some teams now. So we talked a lot of draft strategy and draft topics and things like that. I got a couple team-specific statements here now, with the first being Jets players should be avoided in fantasy because of Adam Gase. So I see this all the time. I'm not going to say my take right now, but I see this all the time. They'll say, player A, no, Adam Gase. And that'll be like the narrative for all the Jets players, all the skill players, the quarterback, whatever the case is. So, Paul, is this fact or fiction?
Fact. So look at the guys that succeeded after they got out from under his wing. You've got Ryan Tannehill that got cut, and everybody in our in our neck of the woods thought he was dead. And then he went to Tennessee, and he was just threading the needle. I mean, people don't realize how good he was in Tennessee last year. Tight window throws, throwing his wide receivers open.
Efficiency was out the roof.
Yeah, exactly. Not a huge volume attack, but very, very well calculated and very, very well tailored to his strengths.
Yep.
You've got I've got notes here and I'm losing it. Oh man, Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake was going to lose his job to Kalen Ballage. He was going to lose his job to Patrick freaking Laird. I always thought he was a good football player. I really did. I was kind of a Drake truther. I was really happy when he got traded. He looked great. Wide open system. Kingsbury out there in Arizona knew how to use him, and he won you some games. And then let's talk about a guy that stayed in Miami once he got out from Adam Gase's wing, Devontae Parker. He had the 5th-year breakout. Was that just because he broke out from Gase? I argued on another podcast that, the big opportunity came after Perriman went down. That's when he started getting double-digit targets. But still, there's a pretty big sample size there. The only guy I want on that team is Jamison Crowder. With Denzel Mims hurt and Brashard Perriman having his swollen knee, that could be a chronic issue. Chris Herndon doesn't exist. He's a myth. He's a lie. Jamison Crowder.
Man, that's going to hurt everything I'm about to say, but all right. Continue.
No, I've walked back that take. I started that last year because the poor man took 3 snaps in 2019. So I started the hashtag Chris Herndon is a myth. Chris Herndon is a lie. I've walked that back because he looks pretty good in that offense, and he looked really good in 2018. He could produce. I'm worried about him staying healthy, and I'm worried about that system. I'm worried about Adam Gase. The one guy that seemed to steadily produce and get 8 targets per game with Darnold under center was Jamison Crowder. I call him Diet Jarvis Landry.
Diet Jarvis Landry. All right. That's a new one for me. That might be one of those sleeper app nicknames that you can just enter.
Yeah, I call him Diet Jarvis Landry. He eats up the targets. He got 120 targets last year. I think a lot of people would be surprised if I put the over under at 110 and you didn't look. I think a lot of people wouldn't guess that he got that many. With all the injuries, I could see him easily getting that. He could get 140, 150. Landry Light, Under Siege just said, Diet Landry. Yeah. So, I think it's a thing, man. I think Adam Gase is horrible. I can't wait till he's not a coach anymore.
All right. Erik, is this fact or fiction?
It doesn't seem like it should be a fact. It doesn't seem like it should be able to be a thing, but it definitely is. And most of us experienced fantasy football players know this pain well, the curse of Adam Gase, right? So I did, you talked a little bit about Parker and his 5th-year breakout, and I did an article on that earlier in this year, and it did a bunch of research on that offense historically and so on, wondering like, hey, why did this happen to Ryan Tannehill and Parker and Drake? And it's consistently one of the slowest offenses in the league. Anything run by Gase, consistently one of the slowest rates per play and fewest plays per game. And like we talked about earlier, it's tough to score fantasy points if you don't get volume. It's tough to get volume if you don't have plays, And that's going to be a thing. That's not going to go away because that's his philosophy. I was wondering, when I first got into it, was it the personnel? Was he trying to keep the defense off the field because it was a bad defense? But I get it. I think that's what he wants to do. He wants to play slow football. He wants to throw passes to the middle of the field. So, yeah, like you said, though, there's a couple players that are going to do good in that system. Landry was a stud always. He was a consistent wide receiver 10 to 15, right, in fantasy football because he was going to get 120 targets a year. He was going to get 800 yards and 4 touchdowns, but in PPR, you're okay with that stat line. And that's Jamison Crowder now. I do like Herndon. I loved what Ryan Griffin did last year when he had the tight end room to himself. And Ryan Griffin, the definition of a jag, right? Like he's a guy that couldn't make the team in Texas where they had just, a jag arena at tight end, right? I mean, they Jordan Thomas, Jordan Akins, like outplayed Ryan Griffin, right? And then he came on and was putting up 100-yard games.
I want to say what's up to Mike just in case he's cutting in and out, but he wanted to say what's up to everybody. Mike Grimes, great guy right there.
Hey, Mike, I saw it on there. Yeah.
Yep.
What's up, Mike?
All right.
Am I cutting in and out? Am I okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good. I didn't mean to cut you off, so you can keep going.
No stress. I didn't know if the connection was frizzy again.
All right.
I would say on that too, though, until the last wave of like Lev Bell drama kicked in, I was pretty okay with him. Bell was pretty close to a running back one last year in PPR, but now it's like I don't know, man. I won't be shocked if Kalen Ballage, like gets dredged back up off of the free agent list at this point after his injury designation goes off, because Adam Gase seems to be agnostic to talent and just like his guys,
Yeah. You brought up a name. I just want to say for deep dynasty guys that are in tight end premium or like 2 tight end leagues, Ryan Griffin is a guy to stash in deeper leagues. They signed him. They extended him last year and paid him, and they know that they've got to have a good, capable backup there with Herndon's injury tendencies. So, not a guy to go crazy over because, like you said, he is a jag, but so is Russell Gage, and you got jags that can get you some flex points. So I don't mind having a few shares. I picked him up after Chris Herndon, obviously wasn't going to play, and I've kept him in almost all those leagues.
Buddy Collins says, "Pass that this way, Paulie." All right.
Collins, not a joint, just a cigarette.
Yeah, we had a guest on one time, and I think he was smoking one randomly. So I think that kind of stuck with some guys that watch. But I'm a massive Chris Herndon truther, and last year I got burned by it because he got hurt, and then he was going to come back, and then he got hurt, and then he was suspended. So he had a rough last year. But rookie season, he was on the field 63% of snaps. He was tight end 9 from week 6 through the end. You see these reports. I mean, there's so much coach talk and camp talk, but a lot of reports have been saying that he just looked like an absolute stud in camp, and Sam Darnold is connected to him like crazy. He did, miss a practice with some chest tightness, but I think that was ruled out to be okay. I was a little excited about maybe like a Denzel Mims coming in and catching some balls. Like, what was Perryman going to do? Was he going to, end, or was he going to start on the way he ended this last year, or was he going to fade off a little bit? But my hot take, my super, I got a bunch of hot takes, but my one hot take for tight ends is that Chris Herndon in 2020 is going to be the Darren Waller of 2019. And I'm not going to say that he's going to finish the same way Darren Waller did, but here's my justification for that. Darren Waller this past season had 117 targets. The next 2 sets of target numbers after him was, Renfro 71 and then Tyrell Williams at 64. I envision a team that's very banged up going into it right now. Perryman, I think, just started practicing. Mims probably won't play right away. Crowder, I think, is going to demand a high target share, but we saw Sam Darnold in the past have this great connection with Chris Herndon, and if Chris Herndon can not get suspended and stay healthy, I don't see any reason why he can't have a gigantic target share on this team, especially when they're going to be losing a lot of games. They lost some guys on their defense. I'm high on Chris Herndon this year, and if he balls out, I think it goes against the I don't want to draft this guy because of Gase, even though a lot of these skill players were kind of ruling off for different reasons. Even Le'Veon Bell with these reports that Gase is kind of pushing him aside a little bit. But I'm big on Chris Herndon, and I'm hoping he breaks the barrier for this Gase stigma.
Fingers crossed.
And am I crazy for that statement? Chris Herndon is the 2020 version of Darren Waller.
Well, Waller had 90 catches.
Do you think Herndon's going to have the opportunity if they don't have a strong wide receiver core for that sort of thing? Because I mean, his rookie
season, he could return value.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think he could return value late in drafts if he stays healthy. Mm-hmm. But I see a solid Kyle Rudolph type year if he stays in there, where I'm talking about 65 catches for 750 yards and 5 touchdowns, which would be a tight end 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't see that kind of volume, man. That's 90 catches, 117 targets. That's a lot for a tight end.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I definitely can see him being the number 1 or 2 target on that team, though. I mean, Perriman's maybe not playing, right? And then we got a rookie competing for targets.
And, he probably is the number 2A, 2B to Le'Veon Bell after Crowder. Yeah.
I mean, these hot takes, a lot of the times you think like, is it possible? And maybe you don't, grab it and hold it all the time. But I had a big bull take article that I just released, and that was one of them. So I don't know. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's go to the Browns, everybody's favorite organization in the NFL. Fact or fiction for this one here. Kevin Stefanski, as the Browns head coach, helps the ceiling Kareem Hunt puts on Nick Chubb. So just to clarify what that means, a lot of people believe that Kareem Hunt lowers the ceiling for Nick Chubb for what he could be, just because he demands a target share and he'll take some carries away, and he's going to be a big part of that offense in comparison to when he was not playing. Nick Chubb was getting, some catches here and there and was the focal point of the run game. Does Kevin Stefanski, former offensive coordinator from the Vikings this past season, does he help Nick Chubb in terms of maybe raising that ceiling that we think is on him, if that makes sense? Erik, we can start with you, and if there's any clarifications, let me know.
Yeah. Nope. I know what you're talking about.
We just lost him.
And we lost him. So we go straight to you, Paul. Curveball right there.
Whoa. Yeah, I think that his run-heavy scheme balances out the loss of PPR upside. And I think the red zone usage, Hunt doesn't take under snap, a lot of under snap plays from Chubb. Mm-hmm. He goes out there and is on the field with him at the same time. Which I love, by the way. I'm envisioning like a 2017 Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara situation with how they use these guys. And they were both very, very fantasy relevant. So I think they could be both very fantasy relevant. I think that Chubb will drop in a lot of drafts to the mid to the back of second round in a lot of drafts, and will be a smash in that place. And I'm all about it. You've got a guy that almost finished as the rushing leader last year.
Yep.
Basically, he was right there for the rushing leader. So I'm all about it. I'm all about the run heavy scheme, and the talent is there. And that's a too many mouths to feed kind of argument too, a little mini one. Mm-hmm. Is there enough to go around for both of those guys? And in that scheme, there is.
Yep. I agree.
And also I'll throw out in Dynasty that both of those players' values are going to go up next year. Chubb's for sure. So if you can get a hold of Chubb right now for cheap because people are worried about Kareem Hunt, go ahead and take him. And take what he gives you this year, because when Hunt leaves town, his value is going to skyrocket. And then depending on Hunt's landing spot, his value is going to go up too, because he's going to go someplace and have possibly the chance to be featured. So just throwing that out there too, that those are two guys that I'm targeting in Dynasty too, because of the obvious situation that we have at the end of the year where Hunt's out of there.
Would you say, this is a side note for this, would you say, depending on the landing spot, obviously, but Kareem Hunt joins another group, would you say they're both top 10 running backs in that case for dynasty purposes?
Chubb is right there. Hunt will still be in the teens. But that's higher than what he is right now.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think Hunt will move up a few spots. His trade value will increase, and I think that Chubb's will too. I think that the arrow is up for both of those guys in Dynasty because they'll be on different teams next year. Erik, you have a better connection. I could see you clearer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I could see your face really clearly now.
I thought you didn't like the question, to be honest, because you almost faked me out. You started talking, and then it was like.
So apparently my phone overheated, and it just shut down all the apps.
This is the best you've been, though, as far as not lag and everything. Good.
No, maybe it's fortuitous then.
Hey.
Sorry though, tech problems here. So sorry, Paul, I didn't get to hear much of what you said. Obviously, I came back in at the end there though, but I think he's better for both of them, to be honest. Probably more so for Chubb than for Hunt. Stefanski, he was with the Vikings for 9 years in different roles, right? So I did an article on him and that offense when they first made the hire, right? It's carousel, Cleveland Browns, try again, Dynasty Nerd, lots of good stats, lots of good predictions about the offense. But all but one of those years, they were in the bottom half of the league in passing attempts. All but two of them, they were in the bottom 10. 5 of 9, they were in the bottom 4 teams. I mean, this guy's going to run the ball, and he's done it pretty effectively. And he's assembled a team of like-minded people in Cleveland. He's got Bill Callahan as his offensive line coach. And last time we saw him, he was in Washington handing the ball to, having his quarterbacks hand the ball to Adrian Peterson 20 times a game and getting, 30-odd-year-old Adrian Peterson 100-yard games, right? So with Stefanski, Cook had career highs in receptions, targets, receiving yards, rush touchdowns. When he took over from, DeFilippo got fired when Stefanski took over. Rushing attempts went up 30%. Rushing touchdowns doubled on a per-game basis. Passing attempts were reduced by 30%. And rushing yards went up by 50%, right? So this guy wants to run the ball, and he knows how to run the ball, and that's what you want if you're a Nick Chubb owner, right? I think there's going to be enough volume so that Hunt is still relevant, but I think Chubb's the one that's going to benefit, right? Chubb's going to be the primary ball carrier. I forget what the exact number was, but I think he averaged still almost 18 carries a game he averaged 18 attempts a game after Hunt came back from suspension. I mean, that's not going down. You know what I mean? These guys are going to run the ball. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 back this year, just because I still think there's going to be some, eating into the workload. It's coming from Kareem Hunt. He's too good. He's not Alexander Madison. This is a guy that was a Pro Bowler, right? But I am high on both of them relative to their values and their draft values in that offense. And I love what Paulie was saying about them as dynasty buys too. I've been trying to acquire Kareem Hunt everywhere I could at his draft prices over the summer.
Now is the time for it too. And Mike said Erik is always doing homework even when he's live. Yeah. Quick numbers. Last season, from within the 20 red zone touches, Dalvin Cook was 5th. Nick Chubb was 4th. Within the 10, Dalvin Cook was 3rd. Nick Chubb was 2nd. Within the 5, Dalvin Cook was 4th and Nick Chubb was 3rd. So these guys are hand in hand. So I think that sounds good because you're getting the offensive coordinator of a guy that was giving Dalvin Cook these touches or writing up the schemes for him to get the similar touches that Nick Chubb had. It wasn't like you're getting a coach that's coming in that said, hey, we're going to diversify who's taking these touches and where. So I think that's good for Nick Chubb stock. I also think back to when Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs were pissed off at their organization for not throwing the ball enough because they wanted to pound the rock. So for me, getting the offensive coordinator as a guy who rosters Nick Chubb, I like to hear that, knowing that they're going to run the ball and they're going to give him the touches and they're going to give him the red zone touches. So if Kareem Hunt takes away some pass catching from Nick Chubb, fine. But you know what? They're still going to run the ball. Kareem Hunt's going to be on the field, like Paul said, lining up in crazy areas and being almost like that wide receiver 3 at times. So I think Stefanski coming in is just fine and lines up for guys that roster Nick Chubb.
I just got to say that assembled a team of like-minded individuals might have been the smartest thing I've heard all day.
Hey.
We also have to keep in mind that they got in Conklin, the Pro Bowl lineman, and they drafted Jedrick Willis from Alabama in the top 10. Also later on drafted Nick Harris to be a backup. So they made a big investment into the offensive line with Conklin and Wills. And I think that Chubb had 10 goal-to-go situations last year and ended up with 1 touchdown. That's not going to happen with this beefier, better offensive line. So there's a few extra touchdowns thrown in there automatically right away. But I had to throw that in there because that just sometimes light bulbs go off when people say things. And when you said the like-minded individuals, the only one really that's there when you talked about complaining from wide receivers, the like-minded individual that might be lacking is Odell. We'll see if he takes the same track that Diggs took when he realized they were going to run the ball 75 times a day.
It might be one of those cases where you see that he was mic'd up and going up to different teams saying, come get me.
Right. Also, you have Stefanski turned Cousins from one of the bottom 5 in play action to top 10. And Baker Mayfield was in the bottom, I think, 5 or 7 last year in play action. So that turnaround would be good for Odell if he takes what he can get.
That's actually a stat I have not seen at all or paid attention to, but that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, and then Case Keenum had the best year of his career when Stefanski was the OC. The best game. I mean, in Case Keenum's like, he's not an elite talent. You know,
super jagular.
Yeah, right.
All right, we are approaching the hour mark, so let's get in this last one, and if we have like any time, the one after it, we can just like briefly 30 seconds each talk on. But my last one, looking at a team specifically, was the statement that Tom Brady will lower the ceiling for Bucs wide receivers. So another ceiling question: does Tom Brady coming into Tampa lower the ceiling for guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? Erik, as long as you're staying on this time, you can start.
I'll try not to glitch out again.
All right. Deal.
Yeah, I think he does. And I know I've seen a lot of smart people having different opinions on this or just outright saying he doesn't. Look, I get it. He's a better quarterback than Jameis Winston. Like, hands down, there's no arguments about that. And this isn't about Jameis Winston's higher ADOT, which is a thing, right? I don't care about that. It's about volume. The number of plays you have to run when you are constantly losing games because your quarterback comes out and throws a pick six on the first drive, opens the second half with another interception, which that's the Jameis Winston special, right? You're just throwing the ball again and again and again, and you're playing catch up. it created artificial volume for those guys. So am I saying they're going to be bad or they're not going to have good years? No, but the ceiling of having two guys finish that high and having Godwin is he the number 2 wide receiver last year behind Michael Thomas, it's going to take that down a little bit. Now, I think they're going to make up some of that volume with efficiency, right? Like they're probably going to be a very efficient offense. There's probably going to be scoring opportunities. Arians likes to throw the ball on short and goal. I actually looked that up earlier. It was like 46% of the time on, from the 3-yard line and in. I mean, but those are probably maybe Godwin and Evans are getting those. I feel like that's a lot of Cameron Brate, Rob Gronkowski territory there. But yeah, man, I just can't see that. I don't have the number in front of me how many times Winston threw the ball last year, but it must have been like pushing 700 attempts, right?
It's 626 attempts, 121 targets for Chris Godwin, and 118 for Mike Evans.
That's less than I would have expected. So I could take an L on this one, but I think overall the passing volume there has to come down, which volume is going to lower your ceiling.
Paul, thoughts?
He does not hamper them at all. Arians loves to throw the ball. He loves to throw the ball in the red zone. So you said Winston had how many attempts? 626?
Yes, sir.
Brady had 613 last year. It was his highest in the last 5 years. Now, his ADOT went way down, obviously. But which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did he lose his deep ball, or did he lose someone to throw the deep ball to? Yeah. After Edelman's 153 targets and James White's 95 targets, the third on the team in targets was Philip Dorsett with 54. And that was your deep threat. And he only caught a little bit over 50% of those. So with Arians' tendency to pass, and in camp, Tom's had the deep ball. I'm here in Indianapolis, and I'm a Colts fan, and we grew up to hate Brady. All right, I'm trying to call it like it is.
All right.
I'm trying to call it like it is. What I can see from what he did last year, from what he's been doing in camp, from what that team can do, from the opportunities that are going to be there, I think that they could have very close to what they had last year. Godwin is a more athletic, dynamic Julian Edelman. He could actually, believe it or not, he could increase. Edelman had 153 targets last year. How many did Godwin have, you said?
It's like 120.
121 for targets for Godwin and 118 for Mike.
So I think the sky's the limit for Godwin. He could actually go up. Evans will probably go down a little bit, but the catch rate and the balls that he's getting, the catchable balls should be in a better range, should be better thrown balls. So I think Evans stays about the same, and Godwin, believe it or not, has a higher ceiling, just because of what we've seen Brady do with the slot.
I can't see them throwing the ball 600 times, though. They shouldn't have to if they're not chasing. I know Arians he's a throw first guy, but I mean, maybe 560 attempts. I haven't projected the team, but I would think, that's a good defense too. That defense came on at the end of the last year. They finished the season. I'm sure we can look up the stats, but I want to say they were a top 10 defense at the end of the year.
Very good run defense. And they had some injuries in the secondary. They could have been a lot better in the secondary, but they were a very underrated top run defense. Look at the division too, and just look at the league. I think that you got to pass to keep up with the Joneses. What do you do when the Saints are throwing up points left and right? And Carolina obviously wants to be an up-tempo team this year too. I'm not saying, it could go either way. You definitely have good cause for your argument, but I think they're going to have a ton of fun and air it out personally.
Yeah. Quick comment. These are my 3 favorite follows. I can listen to you guys for next year. Awesome.
Mike is too nice.
I don't have the numbers, but I was on another podcast recently talking about the Tampa Bay defense, how they're bringing back like 11 out of 12 of their top guys, and then they added some younger guys, Winfield and I don't have the names, a few others. They were progressively better on that side of the ball as the season went on. They didn't start great defending the pass, but it got better, and they actually were causing fumbles. You guys talked about the run defense. I just wonder if Brady coming in, is there really this huge gap? Because I wrote down 121 targets for Godwin, 118 for Evans, and then the next guy was 69. So does Brady come into this offense? Obviously, he's going to be more efficient than Jameis Winston. Does he come in and maybe spread the ball out a little bit more? Does he utilize Gronk and O.J. Howard? Does he throw to the running backs more than Tampa did last year? Does the third wide receiver, whether that's Tyler Johnson or Scotty Miller, whoever it is, get some more?
It's not going to be Tyler Johnson. Let me just interrupt right there. It's going to be Scotty Miller or Justin Watson.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Johnson's going to end up on the practice squad. Sorry, just had
all right. There you go. But whoever that third is, we'll say not Tyler Johnson. But
so my bad, man. I'm just. This is just
good.
trying to be factual.
That's good. Do we think that he's just going to spread the ball more so that there's not this huge gap between two wide receivers and then like everybody else?
I think he throws to his best players. I mean, we've seen that in the past with Moss and Welker, right? We've seen it a few other times with, Cooks. I think it was Cooks and Gronk that were the big targets a couple of years ago. I mean, he throws.
Not to cut you off, Erik. I just want to throw this into your explanation. Do you think there's any pathway for, and we're going to throw names out there, but Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez back in the day? Is there any possibility that's going to be Gronk and O.J. Howard on this team now?
I mean, it could. I don't feel like Arians has really overly utilized his tight ends in the past, right? And I know we got into this last year with the O.J. Howard stuff, right? Before he's never had an O.J. Howard. He's never had a Rob Gronkowski. I will say, though, I mean, this is going to be about Bruce, but it's also going to be about Tom, right? I mean, Tom's going to throw to the guys on the field that he knows are going to get it done. So I definitely see a path to Gronk being relevant. But, I mean, I want to say that, the studs are going to get the targets, but I think we're a little bit throwing darts trying to do a target breakdown on this. We just don't know how Arians and Tom Brady are going to mesh. Also, I'd point out they just went and signed a grinder, like a banger 1-2 big bruising back. Like maybe they want to slow it down a little bit, save Tom's arm for the playoffs. Maybe they want to get a lead and just smash the ball with Rojo and Fournette. I mean, that's not necessarily the prototypical Arians offense, but it makes a lot of sense if you have a 42-year-old quarterback and you want to win Super Bowl, So I won't be surprised if we're surprised by this offense. That's all I'll say.
As far as the tight ends, I think that people that roster either one are going to be really disappointed. It could be a very muted version of Aaron Hernandez and Gronk, where Hernandez was the in-between the 20s guy and Gronk was the red zone guy. And everything that I'm seeing from camp is that's exactly what they're going to do. Yeah. O.J. Howard's going to be the in-between the 20s guy, and Gronk's going to be in the red zone. In a standard league where touchdowns are premium, I think Gronk has value. I wouldn't draft him anywhere else, and I wouldn't draft O.J. Howard anywhere else because his PPR upside is going to be completely muted by very, very little red zone touchdown usage. That's the way I see it, and that's the way the camp, talk has kind of been, is that they're going to be used in very specific ways on the field, and I think one will siphon from the other one.
All right, so the very great points, and we're well past the hour. Not going to go into the last topic. I figured, and if you need a second to think about it, or if somebody wants to go first, that's fine. But one of the stigmas to this lack of preseason is that it has a major impact on rookies, right? Because they don't get the amount of reps and time with the team that the veterans do. So forget about saying this is fact or fiction right now. Let's list two guys, right? This is going to be our last part of this whole show. If we can think, let's list two guys where you think the lack of preseason and lack of camp with their team, it does affect them going into 2020. Two guys, two rookies, and then two rookies who you think it doesn't affect them. Does that make sense? All right. So I threw that one out as a random. So again, two guys, lack of preseason, it does affect them. Two guys, it doesn't affect them for rookies coming in this season. If anybody wants to jump in and be the first guy, welcome to do so. Doesn't have to be an explanation. Could just be listing two guys for each.
I can go unless you want to jump in, Paulie.
Go ahead.
So say two guys that it does affect, and I think there's a lot of these. And I would say real quick, too, that I saw this on your show sheet, and I heard guys doing some research and some good stuff on this a few weeks ago, and they were talking about the holdout year, right, which was it 2014? Is that what it was?
2011.
2011. And actually had a lot of rookies that did really well that year. A lot of rookie running backs did better than historically would be the average for rookie running backs coming in. So there's not a lot of statistical weight to back up that argument. I know anecdotally it makes a lot of sense for us, right? So anyways, that was my side. Sorry to hijack. Look, Keyshawn Vaughn, and I'm getting a lot of arguments about this today because I know he was a polarizing prospect. A lot of people are saying he's a trash player, shouldn't have drafted him, shouldn't have gone where he was. Say he was a reach if you took him anywhere in the first. If you took him ahead of those wide receivers, he was a reach, but I like him as a prospect. He played well in the SEC. He put up some good numbers. I know older prospect, probably bigger and stronger than a lot of the guys, but he's not a bad player, right? And he's a guy that missed some time early with he was on the COVID list, right? No chance to get reps and just no chance to acclimate or make a name for himself in camp. I'm not saying that he was going to be some superstar in a different scenario. I'm just saying that's the kind of guy that needed time to acclimate and prove himself and get the system and didn't get it. And then the other big one for me, and he's going to be okay, I think, but it's just Jonathan Taylor. I think Taylor's the kind of guy that could have seized a stranglehold on the Indy guy. He could have seized a stranglehold on that job, given some more preseason reps. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to – oh, you're killing me. I think he's going to be – he's going to be smashing by the end of the season, right? But I think he's going to come out in a little bit more of a timeshare than we'd like to see if we drafted him in redraft. Dynasty, I mean, I love Jonathan Taylor. He was my favorite prospect at the beginning of the draft process. And after the landing spot in Indy, he was right back up there with me. So two guys that it didn't affect. Happy Paul.
I'm going to jump in real quick, and I'll leave it very short. But I don't think the lack of preseason is going to affect Jerry Jeudy at all. He was my wide receiver one before the draft happened, and I think he's very NFL ready, and he's good to go, and he's going to be very important in that offense. I wrote down DeAndre Swift, too, because I know he's hurt right now, so he probably won't even play week one, or he might be limited. But I think the talent for DeAndre Swift, who was – and Paul's going to go against your guy in Indy, but he was my RB1 before the draft. I think the talent for pass catching and rushing the ball and being versatile, he was going to play right away, in my opinion, over Kerryon Johnson as far as the snap share goes. So I think those two guys, for me, were not going to be impacted by the lack of preseason. Swift's hurt right now, so I'm kind of kicking myself for that. I wrote down on the flip side, I think a lack of preseason is going to hurt the initial jump start for Michael Pittman Jr. just a little bit, because I think Harris Campbell's more of the guy, like, even though he's a second-year guy, he's a little bit more of a vet, and I think Michael Pittman will overtake him later, but not right away. I also wrote down Keyshawn Vaughn just because he was on the COVID list, and missed a lot of time, and now he's way behind everybody else. So those are my two, and I'll let Paul take the mic to end us off here.
Well, Erik, you brought up the holdout, and we talked about it on our pod. The thing to really pay attention to that year is there was a longer offseason and there was a preseason. And injuries were up 23%. So with even shorter offseason and no preseason, I think we could see a year where injuries are up 30% or more from last year, which could give some rookies some opportunities, which could definitely help out things. You guys mentioned a lot of the ones that popped into my head. Keyshawn Vaughn, the fact that there's no preseason games, that's going to kill him. J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor with preseason could have established their roles a little bit more. I think those guys are on the same path where they are the 1A and 1B to begin, but the talent will override the incumbents eventually. And then, Nick, you brought up Judy. That was one that I was going to bring up that it doesn't affect. He's actually my 101 rookie wide receiver as well, and has been all summer. So I'm glad to see there's some solidarity there. And then CD Lamb, I think, is in the same boat. These guys are going to be in the slot. Isn't this exciting? These guys are going to be in the slot for these teams. And then, unfortunately, Jalen Reagor, I thought, was in the same boat, but he's going to be playing through that tater cuff, and he's going to have to wait a whole year to get his surgery and just play through the tolerance of pain. There's other guys, I think, Laviska Shenault, T. Higgins, those guys are going to probably start a little bit slower and not acclimate as quickly. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, cool. Well, we went about almost 17 minutes past the hour mark here. Thanks for jumping on with me tonight, guys. P2W Fantasy Podcast. Where can we find you again? Because maybe, people are listening on iTunes or something like that, and they're skipping through some things and might have missed the beginning. So we want to make sure that we plug your guys' stuff again. So, Erik, where can we find you and find all of your content?
You can always catch me on Twitter. It's at EKBaller. I'm always there to engage, chat, talk fantasy. I post all my content there. And you can read all of my work at dynastynerds.com. Erik Quartz, DynastyNerd /Erik Quartz. I'm going to come up with all of my articles from the past few years. And I'm always here to chat. Hit me up.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. And Paul, where can we find you and what you guys are working on and what you're working on?
Just log on to Fantasy Twitter. I'm probably tagged in half those threads, and I'm proud. I'm proud to be in that spot, and I'm happy to help. At Pauly Sleepers, theundroppables.com. Our rankings are on there. My redraft rankings and dynasty rankings are on there. My sleepers list, my waiver wire article will be on there weekly. We also have our own little channel on Discord. So shout out to the Space Ghost Forest for putting together a really strong fantasy Discord. And then we could send you a link if you want. There's also a locked kind of private channel on the Sleeper app that's all undroppables where we go in and answer questions and stuff. So we're all over the place. And this offseason was like 3 years long. So let's
we're ready for some football.
Yeah.
Very cool talking to you. Very, very cool talking to you.
Like you said, Paul, before, the Undroppables and Dynasty Nerds are two of the biggest groups of content producers, in my opinion, that I always am looking at. So I really do appreciate two of the big faces of those two groups of guys coming on with me tonight.
Tons of mutual respect there, too. Tons of mutual respect between everybody in our crews.
Yeah, absolutely. Love you guys. So thanks again, guys, and we're just going to cut it right there. This will be posted to YouTube and podcasts and everywhere else. So thanks again. Have a good night, guys.
See ya.